The House of Hades is the fourth book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. It is also a sequel to The Mark of Athena. Today, I'm going to be breaking down and sharing my thoughts on this book. So before getting into the book review, I had to say I'm going to be giving a spoiler warning for this book and The Trials of Apollo. So with that, let's get started. I've went through a lot of reviews and opinions on this book, and according to a lot of fans, this book is arguably the best book in the series. I see why they think that, but for some reason, I prefer The Mark of Athena over this one. I'd rate The House of Hades a 4.7 out of 5. This was a really long book compared to the rest, having 78 chapters, and I think I spent a lot of time reading this book. I'm rating it a 4.7 because there were times when the pacing was just slow, and the story sort of dragged at some places. But despite that, I still enjoyed reading this book, and the ending made me quite emotional. This book has revealed quite a lot about Tartarus, the Doors of Death, certain characters, and there were epic battles as well. Basically, this book takes place after what happened in the Mark of Athena, and in that book, Percy and Annabeth fell into Tartarus, and the rest of the seven went on a journey to the Doors of Death. Before we get into the plot, I just had to comment on the dedication the book had. Like, wow, just wow, Rick. He literally apologized for the cliffhanger from the Mark of Athena. The book opens up to Hazel's perspective, and the Argo II is under attack by the Aurae, which are loyal creatures to Gaia. According to this chapter, the Argo II has been constantly attacked by monsters, and they had to get past mountains, specifically the Apennine Mountains. Hazel prayed to her father Pluto, and she sees her horse Orion. The ship stops, and there, Hazel meets with the goddess of magic, Hecate. Hecate tells her that Hazel's mother, Marie Levesque, was gifted with magic, and that Hazel had inherited it. She goes on to say that Hazel would use her magic in order to save Percy and Annabeth, and that she has to defeat a witch. So when I first read about this, I was wondering if the witch was Circe because she was a known sorceress in Greek mythology. So after that, we get to Annabeth's perspective, and she and Percy are still falling into Tartarus. It took them at least 9 days in order to actually reach the bottom, and while they were falling, she saw a river, and I think this scene is one of the saddest scenes in the entire Riordan verse. They landed on the river, which is the river Cocytus, or the river of wailing and misery, and Annabeth tries to keep Percy fighting against whatever the river was telling him. So this is the scene. She hugged Percy tighter and kissed him. "Tell me about New Rome," she demanded. "What were your plans for us?" "New Rome? For us?" "Yeah, Seaweed Brain. You said we could have a future there. Tell me." Annabeth had never wanted to leave Camp Half-Blood. It was the only real home she'd ever known. But days ago on the Argo II, Percy had told her that he imagined the future for the two of them among the Roman demigods. In their city of New Rome, veterans of the Legion could settle down safely, go to college, get married, and even have kids. This scene really breaks my heart, and since I already finished reading The Trials of Apollo, seeing them hope for a future in New Rome in this book just gives me chills because it really and actually happens by the end of the Tower of Nero. So then they move forward and drink in the river Phlegethon, and it temporarily heals them. So, meanwhile, the Argo II gets attacked by dwarves who steal their supplies, but after a long goose chase, Leo and Jason were able to get their stuff back. A couple of more events happen in this book until Percy and Annabeth are attacked by Impausi, and I was astonished when one of the Impausi was Kelly, because we haven't heard from her since the original 5 Percy Jackson books. So basically, Kelly is a character from the Battle of the Labyrinth, and in that book, she was killed by Annabeth. So, while Percy and Annabeth talk to the Impausi, Iapetus, or Bob, suddenly comes in and saves them. So Bob is a character from the Demigod Files, and I haven't read that book yet, but in that book, Percy accidentally wiped Bob's memory and made him believe that his name was Bob, when in fact it was Iapetus. So then the group moves forward and find the shrine dedicated to Hermes, and apparently, the burnt offerings from Camp Half-Blood are sent there, and Annabeth decides to send a message. And then, I was surprised what Annabeth did here. She used Riptide as a normal pen to write. Like, Percy had that sword for about 5 years or so, and they actually never tried to use Riptide as a pen. While all of this is happening, the seven are still making their way to the House of Hades, or the Doors of Death, and Pluto appears to Hazel and tells her that the Doors of Death is guarded by Pasiphae, or the witch Hecate is referring to. According to Greek mythology, Pasiphae was the wife of King Minos of Crete, and she was the mother of the Minotaur. So then, we get back to Percy and Annabeth, and they came across these creatures called Arai, and wow, just thinking of this scene is giving me chills because, oh my gosh, this scene was absolutely intense. Arai are creatures of the night goddess Nyx, and they are the embodiment of curses. So meaning if you try to kill them, a bad thing you did in the past will come back to you. This is made clear when Percy tried to kill one of them, and he was stabbed at the side, which is the same thing Percy did in the Battle of the Labyrinth to the three-bodied Geryon. Things got worse when Annabeth went blind because of the trick she made to Polyphemus in the Sea of Monsters, and when she tried to attack again, she thought Percy had left her. So at first when I read about this, I was confused as to why Annabeth thought that because I didn't think Percy left or abandoned anyone, given the fact that his fatal flaw was too much loyalty. But I was surprised when it was implied that the curse was from Calypso. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I actually forgot about her because she's just been so absent in so many books, and as far as I can remember, Percy told the gods to free her from that island. If you forgot, Calypso was a third-generation Titaness and the daughter of Atlas, and during the first Titan War against the Olympians, she was imprisoned on the island of Ogygia because she supported the Titans. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, Percy lands on her island, and he promised Calypso that he'd make the gods free her from that island, and that's why in the last Olympian, Percy requested the gods to do it. I just expected the gods actually did it, but since Annabeth got cursed, that just meant that they didn't do their promise. What made things even more worse was when the Arai told Bob about Percy wiping his memory, and I just expected Bob to just kill Percy and Annabeth then and there, but despite this, Bob took the two of them to safety. And then, we cut to the rest of the seven, and Jason and Nico are tasked to get Diocletian's scepter, and when they arrive to this place, they are confronted with Cupid, and before I continue, I had to say that this scene just opened my eyes to Nico, and it revealed a lot about him, and what he's been going through since Bianca's death and the Titan's curse. This scene in my opinion is really powerful, and it made me feel so sorry for what Nico has been going through, and it just made me sad in how people treated him just because he's the son of Hades. Also, I just hated Cupid in this scene. He demanded that Nico make a confession about his love life in order to get the scepter, and Nico hesitates until he just yells, "I had a crush on Percy. That's the truth. That's the big secret." And this just threw me off so much. I couldn't read on the pages of this book because I was just in complete shock. Like, Nico was gay. Nico was gay and in love with Percy. I mean, wow. I can't even say what I think of that. Nico in love with Percy? I thought he actually hated Percy. Like, he even locked Percy in the underworld once and blamed him for Bianca's death in PJO. So, all this time, he was in love with Percy. And he left Camp Half-Blood not because people didn't accept him as a child of Hades, but because he hated himself for being gay. I mean, wow. Just, wow. Also, after that encounter, I just loved Jason in that scene. Instead of judging and questioning Nico, he accepted him. And this is the scene. Nico knelt and picked it up. He regarded Jason as if waiting for an attack. If the others found out, Jason said, you'd have that many more people to back you up and to unleash the fury of the gods on anybody who gives you trouble. Nico scowled. Jason still felt the resentment and anger ripping off him. But it's your call, Jason added. Your decision to share or not. I can only tell you, I don't feel that way anymore, Nico muttered. I mean, I gave up on Percy. I was young and impressionable. And I don't... His voice cracked, and Jason could tell that the guy was about to get teary-eyed. Whether Nico had really given up on Percy or not, Jason couldn't imagine what it had been like for Nico all those years ago. Keeping a secret that would have been unthinkable to share in the 1940s, denying who he was, feeling completely alone, even more isolated than other demigods. Nico, he said gently, I've seen a lot of brave things, but what you just did, that was maybe the bravest. So then, Annabeth and Percy meet Damison, a friendly giant and the son of Gaia and Tartarus. He heals both Percy and Annabeth and tells them that in order to get out of Tartarus, they have to get to the Doors of Death, and the Doors of Death is an elevator that will lead them up to the land of the living. But they had to get past the armies of Gaia's forces, so they have to get the Death Mist to disguise themselves from the monsters. The next day, Percy and Annabeth gets the Death Mist from Achilles, the goddess of poison and misery, And I think this part of this book is something fans have been talking over and over about because they think that Percy turned quite evil in this scene. So basically, Agnes gave Percy and Annabeth the death mist, and then she betrays them. A fight breaks out, and Agnes uses her power of poison against the two of them. Then, Percy did something I didn't think was even possible. He controlled the poison and proceeded to choke Agnes, and while reading this, I was stunned because I didn't think Percy's power could go as far as controlling poison. And the fact that he choked the goddess of poison with her own poison is absolutely insane. Annabeth becomes terrified of Percy and begs him to stop doing it, and I'll admit it myself, despite the fact that I was mad at Achilles for betraying them, I was glad that Annabeth put a stop to this because Percy was going a bit too far. Back at the Argo 2, Chione, or the snow goddess from the Lost Hero, comes in and blasts Leo out of the ship and into the island of Ogygia, aka the island of Calypso. Seeing Calypso for the first time after so many books was quite refreshing, and honestly, I felt bad for her. She's been in that island for millennia, and she was so bitter about the gods and Percy because of not keeping their promise of her leaving her island. We see her so angry at Leo because Calypso's curse was that she would stay in that island forever, and once in a while, demigods would come on her island and she would eventually fall in love with them, and a raft would one day come and take them away from her, and the island could never be found a second time. Leo stays on the island of Ogygia for a couple of days, until ultimately, the two of them fall in love with each other and the raft comes. Okay, so I know that the Leo and Calypso pairing isn't exactly the fans' favorite ship, and I understand that. Like, I actually felt that their relationship was a bit rushed, but I still liked it. So, Calypso explains to Leo that the raft would take him away, and then she pushes Leo on the raft. As his raft skimmed over the water, taking him back to the mortal world, he understood a line from the prophecy better. An oath to keep with a final breath. He understood how dangerous oaths could be, but Leo didn't care. "I'm coming back for you, Calypso," he said to the night wind. "I swear it on the river Styx." Leo's line in this part of the book gives me chills every time I hear it because Leo's making a risky and hasty decision that might even cost his life, and even if he was told by Calypso that he could not find the island again, he still promised to the deadly river Styx that he'd come back from her. I mean, talk about the commitment he had for this girl who he met for only a few days. Eventually, Leo comes back to the rest of the seven, and everyone goes to the Necromantion, and from this scene to the rest of the book is my absolute favorite part of the House of Hades. They enter the place and are quickly attacked by giants. So using the Diocletian scepter from Cupid, Nico brings back dead Roman legion warriors to fight with them, and Jason, as the praetor of Camp Jupiter, yells commands in Latin to the dead soldiers. It doesn't work, and it turns out that Jason was having a bit of an identity crisis. He had spent a lot of time in Camp Half-Blood, and he seemed to prefer the Greeks to the Romans, and because of this, the dead Romans didn't want to listen to him. So then, Frank, as a centurion, or a rank in Camp Jupiter, tries to lead the army, and it partially works. So seeing this, Jason says, "Frank Zhang, I, Jason Grace, praetor of the 12 Legion Fulminata, give you my final order. I resign my post and give you emergency field promotion to praetor with the full powers of that rank. Take command of this legion." And instantly, Frank went war mode. He had received the blessing of Mars, and he was literally glowing red. So, we get back to Percy and Annabeth, and the two of them along with Bob are near the doors of death. Gaia's giants are surrounding it, waiting for their turn to go up the elevator, and Bob explains that in order to get up to the land of the living, they have to get into the elevator, and someone outside should press a button for 12 minutes. Okay, so this really threw me off because who would do it for Percy and Annabeth? One of them had to stay and probably even die. And then, I was shocked. Bob volunteered to do it for them, and Damison comes in as well. Even if Percy and Annabeth decided to deny the offer, they knew they had no choice but to let Damison and Bob sacrifice themselves. So, they inch closer to the monsters and titans, and Bob and Damison distract Hyperion and Krios, titans who were guarding the elevator. Things seemed okay at first, until Tartarus himself comes in and tries to stop them. While Damison holds off Tartarus for a bit, Bob moves Percy and Annabeth inside the elevator, and before the doors close, he says, Tell the sun and stars hello for me. This scene is truly heartbreaking, and adding with that line just drove me and a lot of readers to tears. Bob has been in Tartarus almost his entire immortal life, and he mentioned in this book that he missed the sun and that he wanted to say hello to the stars again. And now, he won't be able to do that because he sacrificed his life for Percy and Annabeth and the rest of the seven to defeat Gaia. As Percy and Annabeth ascended the elevator, Hazel and Leo are battling against Pasiphae and Clytius, and a battle of hallucinations happen. Both Hazel and Pasiphae manipulates the mist to defeat each other until Hazel wins. Then, Clytius comes to attack them, but Hecate swoops in and burns him with her torches. She then warns Hazel that the entire place is falling apart, and that they had to get out of there quickly. Nico, and with the help of Hazel, shadow travel everyone out there and into the Argo 2. And there, they see Coach Hedge and Reyna. It turns out that Reyna had been following them all this time because she needed to stop the war Octavian was planning against Camp Half-Blood, and that in order to unite both Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter, she herself should bring the Athena Parthenos to Camp Half-Blood. The seven along with Reyna decided that Reyna, Nico, and Coach Hedge would go together on a quest to bring the Athena Parthenos to Camp Half-Blood. And the book ends with Percy and Annabeth on the Argo 2, and Percy remembers the constellations that Annabeth had taught them all those years ago. He looks up to the stars and says, "Bob says hello." And the Argo 2 sailed into the night. So now, I'll be answering the question, what do I think of Dark Percy? Okay, so Dark Percy is a concept fans have been making because of the scene where Percy choked Achilles, and people are theorizing that Percy was actually evil and that he can go full on dark mode if he needed to. And because of these theories, people are wondering how Percy would react if Annabeth died. Like, would he run to Mount Olympus and destroy all the gods just to save her, or would he search the universe for the murderer and stop at nothing until he or she is dead? And the theories just go on and on. So now, I'll give my thoughts on that. In my opinion, Percy doing what he did to Achilles is understandable, because of his situation. Percy and Annabeth were in Tartarus, a place where the gods placed humans, demigods, monsters, primordial gods, giants, and other enemies to suffer and to be tortured for all of eternity. Only the worst people go into Tartarus, and even the gods themselves feared whatever was down there. So, overall, it's the worst place to be in, and Percy and Annabeth fell in it. Also, Tartarus slowly strips off your humanity and makes you feel so powerless, and I think Percy felt that. So, when he realized he was able to control the poison, he continued doing it because he finally felt like he was in control of something. Like something was finally in his command, and that's why he did what he did to Achilles. I disagree with people saying that Percy was evil, because it's clear throughout all of the books in the Riordan verse, Percy is a really kind person. Like, he'd even save his enemies, and if you were his friend, he'd go through hell with you. Well, in this book's case, literally, but still. What I'm trying to say is, Percy is a really kind person, and I think that everyone has their limits, and in that moment in Tartarus, I think Percy was beyond his limits. So, how about you? What do you think of Dark Percy? Let me know in the comments down below.